So this week we've got a 1950s camera and we've been shooting at an airport, so we just happen to have a 1950s aeroplane, which is a Bristol Britannia. So I've dressed Jamie up as if she was in the 1950s, and we're going to try and recreate the art of travel picture that's hanging up in my flat. So today we're going to talk about the AGFA Clack, a camera imaginatively named after the noise that the shutter makes when you press it. They were made from 1954 to 1965 and they take 6:9 pictures on 120 roll film. The camera has a 95mm single element meniscus lens and takes 8 pictures to a roll. It has 2 shutter speeds, bulb, and 1/30th of a second, or roughly 1/30th of a second. They can focus, unlike the Brownie, closer than 6 feet. And on the side here, you have your options to do that. So you can focus from 3 feet to 10 feet and from 10 feet to infinity. And they also have a yellow filter to increase contrast on sunny days. If you take the camera apart, we have our take-up spool, which is left in from the last time I shot. So the film comes out of here and round onto here. So it's very easy to load. And you wind it on with the wind on like this. And as usual with these cameras, the frame counter is a little red window down here. One of the really fun features about the AGFA Clack is the fact that the film plane at the back is curved, round like this. This is simply a very cheap way of compensating for the spherical nature of the lens. Think of it like being in the Hall of Mirrors at the fun fair. If you have a curved mirror and you're looking at it on a flat plane, it'll appear distorted. But if you were looking at it through another curved mirror, it would even out that distortion. So in all, it's actually probably a better camera. It has more functionality than the 127 Brownie. In 1951, Norman Parkinson and his wife Wenda were returning from a Vogue shoot in Nairobi when their plane had to stop for repairs. While they were waiting for the plane to be repaired, Norman Parkinson took these now iconic images. But in the sun here, we have an exposure of a 30th at f11. So this is going to be correctly exposed and all the shadows are going to be dark. Under the lever positions on the AGFA Clack, you have 2 stops available to you. One is f11 and the other one is f16. Should be alright. AGFA began in 1867 as a coloured dye factory in Rummelsburg near Berlin. They manufactured chemicals for photographic processes. In 1936 they were one of the forerunners to bring coloured photography to the masses with the AGFA new film and process. After the war, the German industry was in ruin, but in order to prevent a repeat of what happened after the First World War, the Allies decided to invest heavily into Germany and restructure it into a modern state. Not only would this pacify the German people, but it would also create an effective buffer between Western and Eastern Europe. It was in this climate of funded industrial rebuilding that Germany incorporated the newest technologies into brand new factories. And it was in this climate that the German Kodak produced a rival to the Kodak Brownie 127, a simple box camera called the Clack. There are a couple of things about this camera that just drove me a little bit nuts when I tried using it. The first is the 1/30th of a second fixed shutter speed. It's just a little bit too slow, which leaves you open to motion blur and camera shake. The other one is this viewfinder. It's great that it's got a viewfinder like this, but it's not as good a viewfinder as on the 127 Brownie, for example, and it distorts a lot. It's a little bit like looking through a fisheye lens, which when you're using the camera doesn't give you an idea of what you're going to get, and it feels very, very, very wide angle. I think for the second roll we can play for a little bit, because old Norman Parkinson would never have used an AGFA Clack to take that picture. Okay, so trying to recreate a Norman Parkinson picture on an AGFA Clack is a little bit like entering a push bike into a Formula One race. So maybe some of my frustrations with this camera were unfair because I was trying to get it to do too much. I'm using a digital camera now and I'm not even sorry. I would have used a 35mm film camera or the Yashica if I'd had it. The digital camera can't cope with the contrast out today. And I've been shooting so much film recently that I'd stopped thinking about the shortcomings of digital photography, in that if you have an extremely bright sky and no lights to fill out your subject, you're going to lose the sky. So I started making worse and worse decisions, and I even pulled out a grad filter. Now, this isn't early 90s Top Gear, so I'm not quite sure what I was doing, but I used it for a bit and then got rid of it. The contrast between the background and the foreground is just too great. So I shot a couple of rolls on the AGFA Clack, and then I did a couple of shots on the 5D Mark III with the 55mm Takumar lens to give it a little bit more of a vintage feel. I think I'm going to get some okay pictures with this. In the end, the images that came off the Clack really weren't that bad. They weren't that sharp, but they weren't that bad. I even put up a shot from the Canon 5D against a shot from the Clack on the Olitography Facebook group, and 90% of the 4 people that replied actually got it wrong, and they thought the 5D image had come off the Clack and the Clack image had come off the 5D. Let me know in the comments below if you think that you can tell the difference between the images that came off the Canon and the images that came off the Clack from this video. So that just goes to show the camera itself is really not that bad. It's just not very fun to use, in my opinion. This Bristol Britannia is one of 2 remaining. It last flew 23 years ago, but is maintained by a small team of devoted volunteers who rely on donations to keep the old girl from the scrap heap. I'll leave their web link in the description if you'd like to find out more or even donate to their cause. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.